Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Izzy at Minerva. In today's video we're going to look at our very own Minerva exclusive sewing pattern, the Tracey Jacket. Now we're going to be focusing on fit and how to fit your Tracey jacket really beautifully, how to cut the right size and how to fit it. This is a great little video if you just want a little bit of further support in terms of refining that fit. I'm going to be talking you through how to measure your body, how to cut the right size, how to make some common fit adjustments, and how to lengthen and shorten the pattern piece, how to adjust the shoulder seam, and how to lengthen or shorten your sleeves as well. So those are the common little fit alterations that we're going to be looking at today. Now don't forget that our Minerva exclusive patterns always come with a lot of video support on our YouTube channel, so do check out the channel. There you're going to find a video all about fabric choices, like the types of fabric that will look really good with the Tracey pattern. You're also going to find a sew along as well, so as well as having all the steps in the instruction booklet, you can also watch someone sew and give you their top tips as they sew the pattern up. In addition to that, we always have a little suite of pattern hacks. So once you've bought the original pattern and sewn it up, you can then try loads of different design styles based on your pattern to make loads of different styles of garments. So a really fun, creative little series there for you too. So the fitting guide here is really helpful. Basically what that shows us is the designer's intent as they designed it. So I don't know if you can see this, but it is a really a loose fitting garment. So this is the inside sort of body shape. And you can see there's like a lot of ease between the edge of the pattern and the curve of the body at that point. There's also a lot of ease around the hips as well. And you'll see that in the finished garment chart on the next page as well. What we've got is a wide shoulder with a back yoke seam and then a dropped shoulder at this point. This is where the shoulder point is there, and you can see the pattern's got a dropped shoulder, which is really nice oversized detail. It's got self-lined patch pockets, and then it's got the cuffs at the bottom, another further pocket down here along the hips, and it's slightly longer at the back than it is to the front. It's designed to be an elongated boxy shape that falls just past the crotch level and is longer at the back. So it has got a really generous amount of ease around the bust already. It says that here. So most cup sizes should be accommodated nicely in the pattern designs. You may need to adjust it further, but it's not super fitted around the bust, so you should be absolutely fine as long as you follow the size chart and cut your right size. So moving on to the body measurement charts, these are the charts that are going to tell you which size to cut. So in order to sew this pattern up, you need to know your high bust, waist and hip measurements. So let's go and take a look at how to measure those critical areas next. The first measurement we're going to take is our high bust measurement. This measurement goes around the top of our bust and it goes underneath our armpits, and it should be in a nice straight line at the back. Take a big breath in and out again, and just make sure you can fit 2 fingers between your tape measure and your body. And that's the measurement. The next measurement is our bust measurement. So this is our full bust around the widest part of our bust. Again, it should be in a nice straight line around the back as well and around the front. Do this in front of a mirror if you need to make sure you're getting it nice and straight. Big breath in and out again. And just make sure you can fit 2 fingers between your body and the tape measure. The next one is our waist, which is higher than you usually expect. You can find out where your waist is. If you bend to one side, you can feel a little break in your body. Then to the other side, you can feel the break there. So for me, it's about 5 centimeters above my jeans, which is pretty typical. Grab your tape measure, wrap it around your waist at that location. Breathe in and out again, and fit 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure. That's your measurement. The final measurement is your hip measurement, which is usually right at the bottom of the zip on your trousers if you're wearing those, but it does vary from person to person. So wrap the tape measure around the widest part of your body between your waist and the floor. So do that in a nice straight line, and just make sure you can wiggle the tape measure up and down so that you find out where your widest bit for your hips is. Once you're confident that you've got that in the right location, pop 2 fingers between yourself and the tape measure, and that's your measurement. Okay, I've got a reasonably straightforward example here to start off with. So what you need to do is to find out which box your measurement falls into in order to determine which size you're going to cut, whether it's A to T or somewhere in between. So using this as an example here, if my high bust is 91 centimetres, I'm falling into the size G. This is the closest size range to my 91. It's 90.8. It's 2 millimetres off. It's really close. My bust in this measurement is 95, and that also falls into the G size. Waist is 76 centimetres, which is sort of in between the G and the H, but closer to the G. And bearing in mind the amount of ease that the pattern has, G is going to be absolutely fine for us. And then if my hips are 102, I sit in between the F and the G, but closer to the G. So in this example, I'm fitting really comfortably into one pattern size, which means that all my pieces can be cut out in a size G, or whatever it is that you measure. As you take a look at this garment size, if we move down the chart, for the size G, you can see the finished garment size. What that's telling us is what the actual circumference of the garment is once it's sewn together around those critical areas, the bust, waist and hips. So if my bust is 95 centimetres, the actual pattern, once it's sewn, if I sew my size, it's going to give me about 15 centimetres of ease because it's 111.4 centimetres in that area. So that's a lot of ease there. So I'm definitely going to fit into the garment there. The waist, if my waist is 76 centimetres, I've got 113 centimetres around the waist because it is that nice straight boxy shape. So I'm definitely going to fit into the pattern there. And again, my hips at 102, that's my body measurement. And the finished garment size is 115, which again gives me over 10 centimetres of ease around the hips. I'm definitely going to fit into that. Now, if you wanted a tighter fitting size or you wanted less ease in the pattern, you could size down and use this chart just to check that you're still definitely going to fit in at those critical points. However, what happens if you actually don't fit into one size? Let's take a look at that now, because that's a really, really common occurrence for most people. In this example here, we're going to work on the women's size range, and you can see the high bust here is 128 centimetres. So if I move along the high bust measurements up here, I fit really nicely into the size R, a little bit smaller than that, but that's fine, that's the closest size. Bust is 140, which very conveniently fits right into the size R. Waist is 130, which isn't in the R, it's actually the size up. So 130 falls into the size range for S. And then for the hips, we've got 156, which again is closer to T than it is to S. Now what this means is I'm going to have to grade between sizes. At my bust, I want to be cutting out the size R, which is this size. Where the pattern hits the waist, I want to be cutting a size S. And by the time I hit the hips, I want to grade it up to a size T. So we need to grade between 3 sizes. Let's take a look at how we do that on each pattern piece. And no matter where you're grading, I'm going to demonstrate where the bust, waist and hips are across the critical areas of the pattern pieces. So you can grade between the sizes that you need to for your size range. Okay, let's take a look at how to grade the Tracey jacket. Here is the front pattern piece. So according to our body measurements here, this example, our bust is a size R, the waist is an S, and the hips are going to fall into pattern size T. Let's start off with the bust. So from the bust upwards, we want to be cutting one size, which is the R. Now you'll notice on this pattern piece, we've got some really helpful guides. We've got the bust level here, waist, their approximate waist, and the hips are usually about 20 centimetres below, 21 centimetres below, which is going to be this notch down here around where the slit is. These are all approximates, and it's okay to be a little bit approximate because everyone's body shape is different. So these are just acting as a guide for us. So at the bust level, I want to cut a size R, and you can see from the key which size and line dash you need to do. So on this particular one, which is the front, I'm going to be tracing along my smallest size, the size R, to start off with. Got a bit carried away there, didn't I? This is the waist, so by the time I hit the waist, I actually want to be the size S and not the size R. So at this point, I want to be grading up to here. So from underneath the arm side down to the waist, I'm actually going to draw a nice diagonal line like that. So I'm grading up. By the time I hit down here, which is the hips, I want to be my largest size, which is a T, and that's that one right there. So then again, a line between the waist and the hips is all that you need at that point. And then from the hips onwards, you just cut whatever size your hips fall into. Now the changes along this side up here are very, very marginal. So you've got a couple of options in terms of grading. You can either just pick your smallest size because the garment is quite loose and oversized. And in that case, then you could just cut your bust size in this example and just follow your bust line down. If you want to be a little bit more precise, you can grade at each point as well. So I'll show you how to do that. So this will be our hip level. This is where that notch is, represents where our waist is. And then this is our approximate bust. So once you know where your key line markings are, you can say, well, this is my bust size. I'm going up a size for my waist and up another size for my hips. And then I'm basically just going to join those three lines together, those 3 points together, and then just straighten it off down to the hip at the bottom and up to the neckline at the front. Okay, and that's how you do the front pattern piece. Moving on to the placket, pattern piece C, you're going to want to make sure that you're cutting the length in accordance with your hip line for this one. So for me, it's going to be the bottom line I'll be cutting out. And as we move on to the under collar and upper collar, this section of the garment is going to sit above your bust. So again, just cut your bust for the collar. So for me, it's going to be a size R. So that's the line I'm going to follow. And the same for the other one. Moving on to our next sheet, I've got the back yoke here. And again, the yoke is above our bust, so we're just going to cut our bust size for this one. The pocket doesn't need any grading, it's just one size fits all. The front hem facing will be your hip size. The cuff will be your bust size because that is associated with your sleeve, and your sleeve will be your bust size again, simply because the arm side sits above your bust. Moving on to our third sheet in the women's size, our sleeve, back sleeve is going to be bust, same as the front sleeve. The lower pocket is one size fits all. The back hem facing will be your hip size. And then finally, we move on to the back pattern piece. This one is going to be graded in the same way as we did the front. So for us, we're going to stick to our bust until just underneath the arm side. This notch here represents our waist. And this slit line here represents approximately where our hip is located. So for our hip, I'm going to cut my size T. My waist is an S and my bust is an R. Grab your ruler and literally just join those dots effectively. From the hip down, follow your hip size. And from the arm side up, just follow your bust size. And you can see that's going to tie in really nicely with your yoke, isn't it, that we cut with our bust size earlier. We've got a nice straight line down there for cutting on the fold. And there we have it, every single piece graded according to the size that you need. Okay, we're now going to look at some common fit alterations for the Tracey jacket. We're going to start off with lengthening or shortening the pattern piece. Now you're going to need to lengthen or shorten the pattern piece if you are significantly taller or shorter than 5'6" or 167 centimeters. And this is because the pattern has been drafted for someone with a height of 5'6". So let's imagine in this example that you are shorter than 5'6". Let's take a look at how we would shorten the whole pattern proportionally so that it accommodates your height rather than someone of a height of 5'6". So if you look at the pattern piece here, effectively what we're going to do is we're going to shorten it between the waist and the hips at this point to raise up the hem to make it shorter so that the hips are sitting correctly in the approximate correct location for your hips. So to start off with, I've got pattern piece F, which is the body front. And this is a simple alteration, a really simple change. I'm going to find the halfway point between the waist and this notch here, which is approximately where the hip is. So measure the distance between the two and find a happy halfway point, probably around 10 centimetres below the waist. Line up your ruler with the centre front over here and just draw a line that is perpendicular to the centre front at that 10 centimetre mark. Now let's assume that you want to make a 4 centimetre change. You want to reduce the height of the garment by 4 centimetres. Let's show you how to do that. Working with this line here, we're then going to place the ruler and mark a distance of 4 centimetres above that point. Fold along the original line. And once you've folded along there, just fold up so that that original line matches the dashed line that you just drew. And then effectively what we've done is we've just taken out 4 centimetres and squashed it into the pattern piece. So you can just tape that down now. Now you will notice that obviously the pocket has now got a lot shorter, so shorter by 4 centimetres. So it might be that you actually just want to extend the pocket by 4 centimetres. So you've got the corner marking 4 centimetres below. So that's going to extend down to there. And likewise with this little pocket marking here as well, mark it down 4 centimetres below so that you know you've got that placement correct. Okay, and that's how you change the front pattern piece. If you want to lengthen the body on the back, we're just going to do exactly the same process. Let's grab that piece and take a quick look at it. Now the back section consists of the back body, H, and G, the back yoke. We only need to look at H, so just remove pattern piece G. This is our waist notch here, so drop a point and mark a point along the side seam 10 centimetres below. Square across from the centre back. Draw a line 4 centimetres above that line and then fold the piece of paper up to enclose that 4 centimetre difference. The only other piece we need to change is the front placket if we are changing the length. This one is much easier to do. We're simply just going to chop off 4 centimetres or the length that you need from the bottom. That just means that all of our buttons stay proportionally in the correct location. So working along the bottom, draw a line that is 4 centimetres above the bottom and very simply just cut that off. Now at this point obviously the notches from here downwards are probably not going to match up, but that's okay because you know that you've got the pattern piece the correct length. The next fit alteration I'd like to look at is how to actually shorten the sleeves. Now because this pattern has long sleeves, it's really important to get that hitting at exactly the right point. You don't want to feel like you're being overwhelmed by your garment. And likewise you could use the same principles I'm showing you now to lengthen the sleeve as well if you need it to be longer than what it's been drafted for. So let's take a look at that other common fit alteration now. On the screen in front of me, I have pattern piece K and L, which are the front and back sleeve pattern pieces. We do also have a cuff to add into the bottom, but we're not going to be looking at altering that one. We're very simply just going to be shortening the sleeves for these two pattern pieces. The first thing that I've done is actually line these two sleeves up exactly. So the bottom of the hem is just matching up beautifully. They're both level down at the bottom, and also that slit line is sitting in the same place across both pattern pieces. First of all then, extend the grain line down. So you've got a nice little guide. Then using your ruler just above the slit, and we want to keep that as a nice reference for just a few centimetres above the slit, we're going to just draw a nice straight line across. Let's say we want to reduce the sleeve length by 3 centimetres. Draw a parallel line 3 centimetres above the line you just drew. Cut along your original line. Take the bottom piece and lift it up and locate it using this grain line as a nice marker up to here, keeping that grain line in exactly the same place. Make sure it's really nice and straight with your 3 centimetre offset line, and then just stick it in place. Do the same for the other side. And now we're going to do this thing which is called truing up the seams. All that means is just creating a smooth curve between one point and the next point, because we don't want a jagged bit like this on our pattern. So very simply for this pattern, draw a line between the bottom of the cuff and the top of the armscye. And on this side, it has a slight curve here. So you just want to pick up on that curve, and the same on the other pattern piece. So what that has basically done is it has kept the proportion of the cuff the same. So we've not reduced the width of the cuff at all. So that's still going to fit really nicely onto piece M, which is our cuff. It's also kept the slit the same length. So in terms of getting your hand in and down into the cuff, that's still really comfortable. But all it's done is just reduce the overall length of the sleeve equally for both sizes by 3 centimeters. And there we have it, a nice simple alteration there for you, which is really going to help you get the fit of your sleeve perfect. Okay, the final alteration I want to look at is the shoulder alignment. Here is our Tracey Jacket. This is one little version of her. What we're going to look at is this shoulder seam up here. So the shoulder seam on the garment should sit right at the top of the curve of the shoulders. As you can see in this example, it is, but when you get the garment on your body, you may find that actually the shoulder seam is sort of sitting tilted and towards the back, or potentially tilted and sitting a bit too forward on the front of your garment. So let's take a look at how we adjust that so that it's sitting beautifully right on the top of your shoulder. Now, in the demo that I'm going to show you, we're going to assume that once you've sewn the garment, the shoulder seam is too far on the back. So what we're going to do is either chalk a line on the garment where we want the new shoulder seam to be, or we can just pin it in place. Okay, so as you can see, I've just pinned the location of where I want my shoulder seam to be on the garment. And as you can see, it doesn't align with where it currently is. So let's take a look at how we can adjust the pattern pieces to resolve that. So in order to do that alteration, we need to have the front body and the back yoke, because these two are going to attach together at that point. So the first thing you need to do is to measure how far forward you need to bring the seam allowance. So this is the seam line here effectively, and I'm going to imagine that we want to bring it forward, keeping it at the same place there. We want to bring it forward by 3 centimeters. To start off with, mark where the seam allowance is along the neckline and the armscye. Next, mark a point along this location that is 3 centimeters offset from the shoulder seam at the seam line point. Join that line up with the junction up here, and effectively this is where we're going to want our seam line to be. Obviously on this pattern piece we've got a seam allowance running down here, but we're also going to be taking off the same amount of seam allowance down here. So if we know there's a 3 centimeter shift that we need to do, we can literally just draw it on, because that line takes into account the seam allowance already. Then very simply just cut along that line. Now, we're really happy with the armscye and the circumference of the armscye, so we don't want to lose this volume here. So what we need to do is to add it onto the back. So it really is a very simple case of just adding it on like that. And what that has done has ensured that the overall armscye remains the same circumference, same length, but that this seam has been moved forward onto the front at this point here. And that's all it is in order to alter your shoulder seam. Bring it forward or back. That principle applies to either. Okay, and that wraps up our Tracey Fit video. I do hope you found that really helpful and you thoroughly enjoy sewing your version of the Tracey Jacket. I've been Izzy at Minerva. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time.